everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So this video is going to be a tutorial for this gorgeous fitted top. It's got a really nice stretchy stitch using a kind of like a hybrid of the sedge stitch. The stitch is nice and stretchy, which gives it such a figure hugging look, and this is purposely a nice hourglass shape. And I absolutely love the sleeves on this. And I even tried this out with a mohair yarn, and that came out really nice too. This is definitely more of the intermediate advanced type of tutorials, so I highly recommend knowing your single crochet, half double crochets, and being familiar with keeping count of your rows and increasing and decreasing, that type of thing. So let's just get into the tutorial. So for this project, I'm going to be using the King Cole homespun yarn. This is in the shade Mother of Pearl, and the reason I'm using this is because I love the texture. It's sort of got that fluffy, slight texture. The other colour top I made, I used a mohair yarn, so that was even finer. I actually think I prefer how that one came out, so I definitely recommend a fine yarn for this project. It gives a really nice effect with the stretchy stitch. However, I still think that a double knit yarn will work just fine. Anything larger though, I haven't tried, so I can't really comment on how it will come out. I've got about 200 grams of this, and I used just under 200 grams for a size small to medium. I'm somewhere in between a size small to medium, so that was perfectly enough for me. And as I started this top, I did use the 3.5mm hook, but you'll see me later on switch to a 4mm hook, so I highly recommend, if you're using the same weight yarn that I am, to use a 4mm hook. But I did use the 3.5mm hook for my mohair yarn, so just keep that in mind. And then you're also going to need some stitch markers, and a measuring tape handy would also be good as well. I'm going to be starting off by chaining the circumference of just under the bust, which is around the rib cage, and you want to make sure that your long chain fits right around the rib cage at a perfect kind of tension, and you want to make sure that your final chain amount is a multiple of 3. So whether that is 60, whether that is 90, etc., you just want to make sure that the chain amount is a multiple of 3. Because our stitch later on is also going to be worked in multiples of 3. So now you have your long chain. You want to make sure that your chain at this point is not twisted, and we're basically going to be slip stitching into the back bump of that very first chain that we made. So we're going to be just joining it up into one big long circle. I'm just kind of flipping the chain to the back to make sure that I can catch the back bump. And then I'm just making a slip stitch into that back bump to join the ring. Personally, for this joining of the chain, I like to make sure that the chain is exposing the back bumps rather than the regular like V's, because I want to be working in the back bumps for all of my kind of bra cup sections and the back panel, etc. So the place where we just made that slip stitch, that is going to be basically marking the centre of under the bust, so right underneath the bust, right in the centre of the kind of rib cage. You are going to then count across from that slip stitch in multiples of 3, and once you have counted across the width of one bra cup, so that is from the centre of the under bust right out to the sort of side of the rib cage, you are going to place your stitch marker there and make sure that it is a multiple of 3. So I counted 30 stitches across for my measurement of the of one bra cup, and then I placed the stitch marker in that 30th stitch. And then you just want to do the exact same thing for your other bra cup, starting from that centre slip stitch, counting outwards on the other side, the exact same number of stitches of the multiple of 3 as well. So I just counted 30 all the way across the other side and then placed another stitch marker there. This is just marking out our kind of front panel bra cups. So we're going to do the first bra cup, and this is going to continue in the same direction as the slip stitch that we just made. So I'm going left to right, and I'm going to start off with a chain 2, and then I'm going to make 2 half double crochets in the same slip stitch that we just made, so all in that same stitch. And then I'm going to be skipping the next 2 chains, and then I'm going to make a single crochet into the following chain, and then 2 half double crochets into the same chain. So this is going to create your first cluster. Then I'm going to skip 2 stitches again, and make another single crochet, half double crochet and half double crochet in the same chain. And then I'll be skipping 2 stitches again, making another single crochet, half double crochet and half double crochet in the same chain. And then again, I'm going to skip the next 2 chains and into the next chain, make another cluster, so single crochet, half double crochet and half double crochet. And then I'm just repeating this process along. And then you want to continue this sequence of skipping 2 and then creating your cluster, skipping 2, then a cluster, all the way until the stitch marker. And here I am just completing my final cluster, so single crochet, half double crochet and half double crochet where that stitch marker is. And then I'm just going to check that the kind of bra cup measurement is correct. So I'm lining up the stitch marker with the kind of side boob area, and then I'm just dragging it all the way across to the centre of the chest to make sure that the under bust measurement is correct and lining up with what I've crocheted. And then for the next step, we are going to be finishing our first row with skipping 2 chains and then making a single crochet into the following chain. And that is the end of our first row. To start row 2, you want to chain 2 and turn the work, and you're going to make 2 half double crochets into that very first stitch. This is going to create your first cluster. And then you want to skip the next 2 stitches and then create your next cluster into the next stitch, which is your single crochet, half double crochet and half double crochet. And then you want to skip 2 again and then make your next cluster. Skip 2 again and then make your next cluster. And then you just want to repeat the skip 2 and then cluster stitch all the way across. And once you have 3 stitches left in your row, you're going to skip the final 2 stitches and you're going to make a single crochet into that top of the chain 2 to end the row. Okay, so for row 3, this is where I'm going to be decreasing. This is going to give the bra cup a kind of more of a scoop shape. So I'm going to chain 2 as normal and turn the work. And I'm going to be doing the decrease in this very first sort of area. So I'm going to single crochet 2 together in the first stitch and the 4th stitch in the row. So I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then skip the next 2 stitches and into the 4th stitch, insert my hook, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on the hook, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And then I'm going to complete the cluster as normal by doing 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. And then from this point forward, I'm continuing the pattern as normal. I'm going to skip 2 and then make my regular cluster. So single crochet, half double, skip 2, single crochet, half double, all in the same stitch. And I'm going to continue that cluster sequence all the way across until the end of the row. And when I have those last 3 stitches left, I'm going to skip the last 2 and single crochet in the top of the chain 2. For row 4, I'm going to be doing a normal row, so I'm just going to chain 2 and turn the work, and there's no decreases in this row. I'm simply just going to make 2 half double crochets in the first stitch to start. and then I'm going to skip 2 and then make my cluster stitch in the next stitch, and I'm going to repeat the skip 2 cluster stitch all the way to the end. And you'll notice that because we did the decrease row in the previous row, you'll have 3 stitches to skip instead of 2, and then you just want to skip those 3 stitches anyway and make your last single crochet into the top of the chain 2. So I'm going to now start row 5, and that's going to be another normal row, so literally just the same as we've been doing. I'm going to chain 2, turn the work, make my first 2 half double crochets, and then I'm going to do my skip 2 cluster repeat section all the way to the end, and then when I reach the end I'm going to skip the last 2 stitches and single crochet in the top of the chain 2 to end. And then row 6 is exactly the same. Again, chaining 2, making my first 2 half double crochets, then doing my skip 2 cluster sequence all the way to the end, and then single crocheting in the top of the chain 2. And row 7 is where I'm going to be decreasing again. So basically for my personal sequence, I'm going to be decreasing every 4 rows, starting at row 3, which we have already done. 4, 5 and 6 were normal rows, and then at row 7 I'm going to decrease again, and then row 8, 9 and 10 are going to be normal rows, and then I'm going to decrease again at row 11, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have up on screen all of my decrease row points. Your decreases can be completely different depending on how frequent you want to decrease. This particular decrease sequence gave me quite a low scoop neck. If you want your top to decrease less often and kind of cover more of the chest area, then do your decreases way less often than me. So you might want to do them every 6 rows, every 7 rows, whatever it is. But you just want to, whenever you do the decrease row, complete the decrease row as the pattern tells you to. So I'm now about to start row 7, which is going to be my next decrease row. I'm going to chain 2 and turn the work, and I'm going to do my typical decrease, single crocheting the first stitch and the 4th stitch together, and then completing that cluster with 2 more half double crochets in the same stitch. And then I'm going to continue my regular sequence of the sedge stitch, or my version of the sedge stitch, skipping 2 stitches and then making a cluster into the next stitch, skipping 2 stitches and then making a cluster into the next stitch, so on and so forth. And I'm going to repeat that all the way across the row and finishing with a single crochet in the top of the chain 2. And I just wanted to add a quick note that when you are getting to the end of your row, you should have 2 stitches left to skip, and then your 3rd stitch is technically the top of the chain 2. So you always want to still create the 2 stitch gap between your last cluster and the single crochet. So now I'm just going to continue doing my regular rows for the next 3 rows. So that's row 8, 9 and 10, and then on row 11 I will decrease again, and I'm going to repeat that sequence of normal rows and decrease rows all the way up until I reach the top of the shoulder. The bra cup reaches the top of the shoulder. And I just wanted to give a little reminder as well that every time you do a decrease row, your following row will always end with skipping 3 stitches instead of 2, and then completing a single crochet into the top of the chain 2 as normal. It might be a good idea to make a note of what specific rows will be your decrease rows, depending on whether you're doing the exact same rows as I am or if you're doing your own sequence. And then it also might be a good idea to just highlight each row after your decrease row will be the skipping 3 stitches at the end rather than 2, just to kind of give you a little bit more guidance along the way. So I'm just going to carry on crocheting these rows in the background while I just give you a few tips and notes that I want to share. So I ended up in total doing 36 rows. I did my decrease row on row 35, and then I just did a normal row on my final row, which was row 36, and then I just fastened off. You might have a different number of rows, especially if you're doing a different sequence of decreasing than I am. You know, if you're decreasing every 5 rows or every 6 rows, you might have a different number of rows in total that reach your shoulder. So it is completely kind of down to your own preference, and you know, you're the designer. Okay, so now I've done one bra cup, I'm going to do the other one, and the other one is literally going to sit right here and go the opposite way, diagonally. And then the back panel is going to be the stitches that are left, if that makes sense. Here I have my other stitch marker, which indicates where I'm going to be like ending the bra cup, if that makes sense. So already placed that there earlier. And to make things a bit easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my first row so that when I get to my decrease row, it's going to be on the kind of same side as this decrease row. This is just going to make things a little bit easier. So I'm basically going to strategically place my first row so that when I do end up decreasing for row 3, it's going to be in that kind of same side as we did on this one. Doing it the opposite way, where I would attach the yarn at my stitch marker and crochet down, would mean that I start my first row here, my second row will go back along, and then my third row, which is the decrease row, means that I have to figure out a way of skipping the stitches to complete that decrease, and I just didn't want to make it more difficult for you guys. So I highly recommend doing it this way, and it's not going to change the way your top looks at all. Okay, so I've got my working yarn and I'm going to make a slip knot. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to be placing my yarn in the center here and then working my technically 30 clusters all the way across to the stitch marker. Doing it this way means that I start here, I crochet my first row all the way to the stitch marker, chain 2, turn the work, and then crochet back for row 2. And then for the third row, which is the decrease, I chain 2, turn the work, and I'm easily able to do the exact same method as I've done on this side, where I crochet 2 of those stitches together and then create the 2 half double crochets. So that's the first cluster, etc. And then I just carry on as normal. So essentially we're going to be working on the back of the chain. So you want to flip your work to technically the back and take your hook and your stitch marker, and you want to take your first back loop that you see right there and then pull your yarn through like that. And then we're going to chain 2, start our first row, and I'm going to place 2 half double crochets in that back loop. That's 1, and this is 2, and I'm just crocheting over this tail. And then I would skip 2 back loops, and then in the next back bump do my sedge stitch cluster. So single crochet, half double crochet, and half double crochet, all in that same back bump. Okay, and then repeating that second cluster just like I did there, all the way across until the stitch marker. Okay, so I'm just going to complete my last cluster before that single crochet to end the row. As you can see here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That matches the amount of clusters over here, but technically that takes up 30 like chains, if that makes sense. So the last step is obviously skip the 2 back bumps, and I'm going to make a single crochet to end in that stitch marker space right there. So I just wanted to come in and quickly add that the first bra cup I ended up doing the last cluster where the stitch marker was, and then I skipped 2 and did a single crochet. And in this one, I did just the single crochet in the stitch marker space. I realised that I moved the orange stitch marker into the single crochet space rather than the final cluster, then taking the stitch marker out and then skipping 2 and completing the single crochet. So the numbers are still completely the same. It was just that I forgot to place the stitch marker in the last cluster space, but it was just that I placed the stitch marker basically where the actual end of the row was versus the last cluster. So I just wanted to add that. It's not a mathematical mistake at all. I still did end up doing my 10 clusters or 30 stitches technically. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in case anyone was confused. Okay, so if for whatever reason you ended up reaching your stitch marker and you were maybe a chain off, don't worry, this doesn't mean that you have to undo your work entirely and start again. You can get around it by basically just making 2 single crochets into that stitch marker space to even it out. However, before you do that, just double check that if you did reach your stitch marker space, your back panel is still a multiple of 3, because if it's not, it might mean that you accidentally placed the stitch marker 1 stitch slightly off. So you want to just check the back panel as well and make sure that you've got a multiple of 3. If you complete your bra cup just fine with your correct number of stitches for the sequence, but then we get to the back panel and your number is slightly off, then this is completely fine. Once again, you do not need to undo your work. You can just basically crochet the multiple of 3 as best as you can, and say you get to the end of the row right here and you only have 29 instead of 30 or another number that is a multiple of 3, then you can always just add an extra single crochet at the end to complete your stitch, to complete the sequence, so that you are in the same number, and you can then just carry on your pattern that way, if that makes sense. And row 2 is pretty self-explanatory. It's the exact same as row 2 in the other bra cup. I'm going to chain 2, pan the work, and then I'm going to complete my sedge stitch as normal, starting with 2 half double crochets and then skip 2. Then I'm going to do my normal sedge stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, skip 2, sedge stitch, skip 2, sedge stitch all the way across. And then in that final space right here, we've got those 2 chains where we begun. I will single crochet in the second chain of those 2 chains. Okay, so I just completed my second row. I just did the single crochet in the top of the chain 2. Now I'm going to start row 3, which is going to be my decrease row. If your row 3 is not a decrease row because you chose to decrease maybe on a different row and your sequence is different, then continue doing that as normal. So maybe continue crocheting until you need to get to your decrease row, and then you can just follow this along. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to do my decrease section. So I'm going to single crochet 2 stitches together right here to make sure that they join. So here in this first stitch right here, and then here in this 4th stitch right here. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, skip 2, insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, just like I did before. And then I'm going to finish with 2 half double crochets to complete that sedge stitch. I'm just going to continue all the way across, skipping 2, then doing a sedge stitch, skipping 2, then a sedge stitch all the way across. And in that final chain 2, the top of the chain 2, I'm going to single crochet. Okay, so I just finished my single crochet in the chain 2, and now I'm just going to continue now with my sequence, and I'm now starting row 4. So row 4, 5 and 6 are going to just be normal rows for me, and then when I reach row 7 I'm going to have my decrease row. So my decrease row is always going to end up on the same side. It's going to be the back of the work, but it's going to be nice and easy to crochet those 2 stitches together. And I'm basically just going to mirror exactly what I've done in my first bra cup with the second. Make sure that you are just trying it on every few rows, hold it up against you and check that it is fitting well. And remember, the bra cup will stretch both sideways and lengthways, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to do the rest of the bra cup now off camera, and then I'll come back and show you the back panel. Okay, so I've completed both of the bra cups now, and I've just flipped the work to the back so that we can now work on the back panel. So I've just counted all of the rest of the chains, and I've got 39 in total, which is obviously a multiple of 3. We're going to be doing the back panel now. We're going to basically just create a very flat block of just normal sedge stitch rows, and then you want to decide exactly what point we're going to stop doing flat crochet, and then we're going to decrease to create these straps on top. Essentially, we'll have a big rectangle, and then we'll separate the rectangle off into 2 and create these 2 triangular shapes. But you want to make sure that you are deciding where you're doing that now, so that you can keep an eye on where you're at for your flat rows. So I'm just going to take my main colour, make a slip knot, and I'm just going to basically attach my yarn in that very first chain that I see after the bra cup ended down here. that. And then I'm just going to place my yarn on the hook and then pull through. And I'm going to be technically starting a new row, so I'm going to chain 2. And in the first stitch here, I'm going to create 2 half double crochets. Just like we did for row 1 of all of our other rows. 2 half double crochets. And then I'm going to skip 2 back bumps, and then into the next back bump, I'm going to do single crochet and then 2 half double crochets. And skip 2 again, and then single crochet, and then 2 half doubles in the same bump, like that. I'm doing the exact same thing as before. I'm going to work all the way across, and then when I get to the end of the row where I reach my final back bump, I'm going to single crochet. And then I will just chain 2 and turn the work. In the very first stitch, I will do 2 half double crochets because the single crochet counts as kind of part of the sedge stitch in the previous row. Skip 2, sedge stitch, skip 2, sedge stitch, skip 2, sedge stitch, and so on. And then once you get to the end of the row, you skip 2 and make a single crochet in the top of the chain 2. Then from that point, you can just repeat row 2 onwards until you are ready to break the kind of block off and make your straps. Okay, so I've just done the amount of rows that I wanted to do before I actually start the back straps. I've done 12 rows in total, and I'm going to give you 2 different options that you can do for your back panel. It's completely up to you. So say that you are finished with your block part and you are happy now to start doing the straps. What you can do is you can match exactly at what row you are at on your block panel here with the bra cup, so that you would technically start decreasing in the same row. So for example, if I just line this up here, what you can do is you can count how many clusters you have just to make it easier on your back panel and stop when it ends kind of at the corresponding row on the bra cup. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roughly, and then a single crochet to end. What you can do at that point is start your next row and do your 6 clusters just as normal and then single crochet. And then from that point, follow exactly what you did for the bra cup at that same row. So decreasing where you decreased on the bra cup, etc. And just follow it up until you have got the exact same amount of rows. So that's an option. However, my back panel is too kind of small to match the bra cups, and if I did do that, then I would end up with a very small gap in the middle. And I want a more open back, so if you want a more open back, then definitely do this option. So what you can do is just basically find the section of where you like the thickness of the bra cup. So I'm just going to give this as an example. So this cluster row right here has got 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters and then a single crochet. So I'm just going to count what row that is. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 29, 30. Okay, so row 30 is where I quite like the thickness. So what I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to do 4 clusters and a single crochet, just like row 30 is. And then from that point, I'm going to do normal rows up till row 30, and then that's where I'm going to continue the pattern. So I'll just do this as an example. So whatever side you are on, you can just carry on. I'm going to chain 2 and turn the work. I'm going to do 2 half double crochets in the first stitch. It's going to be my first cluster. And then I'm going to skip 2 and then do my second cluster. I'm going to skip 2 again, do my third cluster. I'm going to skip 2 again and do my fourth cluster. Like that. And then to finish the row, I'm going to skip 2 and do a single crochet. So this row now matches row 30, technically, in terms of the width and thickness. This is also going to work perfectly when I match it the other side. I'm still going to have a nice gap in the middle, which is going to give it a bit more of an open back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to track where I'm at for the rows. So I'm currently at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, row 13. So I'm going to crochet from row 13 up to 30, which is the section that is going to match the width, if that makes sense. And then from that point, I'm going to copy what I did here for the decrease section, if that makes sense. So I'm going to copy, so once I reach row 30, I'm going to copy the pattern of the bra cup. I'm going to kind of follow it on. So row 30 is a normal row 31 is a decrease row 32 is normal, row 33 is normal, row 34 is normal, and row 35 is my last decrease row. This is just my numbers, yours might be different. If you decided that you wanted yours to be further down, as in your back straps would be the thickness of a row further down, then you can obviously crochet your amount of clusters and then finish with your single crochet. Then do normal rows up until that row that you selected, and then from that point copy the bra up row. So what I'm going to do now is I've done technically row 13. From row 13 to row 30, I'm going to just do normal rows because that's when it's going to match, if that makes sense. And then at that point, I'm going to decrease. So I'm going to meet you back at that decrease point. Okay, so I've just completed my 30th row, and I'm now going to start row 31, which is going to be my decrease row. This is where I'm starting to decrease. This is going to make the inside edge more triangular. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn the work. And I have reached the side where basically I would have to decrease on the edge rather than at the beginning of the row. So I'm going to have to decrease at the end, but I'm going to show you how you can do that. So I'm going to just do 2 half double crochets in the first stitch to begin with, same as normal, and then I'm going to do my next cluster, normal, and my next cluster is normal, and then what I'm going to do now is I've got technically my next space to do my cluster, and then my 2 spaces to skip, and then my chain 2, the top of the chain 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my single crochet here, and I'm going to decrease that single crochet, if that makes sense. I'm going to skip 2 and insert my hook into the next space, yarn over and pull through. And then I'm going to skip those last 2 half double crochets, and I'm going to find the top of that chain 2. And I'm going to yarn over and pull through that. 3 loops on the hook, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that's how you can decrease on the inside if your pattern calls for it, or if your sequence calls for it. And now I'm going to start row 32 as normal, chain 2, turn the work, and I'm going to do 2 half double crochets in the first stitch because this is a normal row. And then I will carry on as normal, skip 2, and then my sedge stitch cluster, skip 2, my next cluster, and then skip 2, and I'm going to single crochet in the top of the chain 2, finish. That. Okay. So now I'm going to complete row 33, 34, and 35 off camera. But yeah, I am going to now finish this side and then complete the other side off camera. And then once I've completed both sides, I'm then just going to sew the top together, the top straps here with just the long tails that I have used to fasten off. Okay, so I've just completed my back panel and I've attached both of the straps together like this. I just sewed them together, and don't worry about any ends, I'm going to weave them in later on when we do the straps. And at this point you just want to try on your work, and if you want to, you can do an optional row on the armholes where you're just going to decrease them to give it a little bit more shape and also to just kind of join this section a bit more. And to do that, you can just decrease in any sequence you want to. So you can start your work anywhere you want. I'm just going to start here at the top. makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to just start right here on the top on this first side, and I'm just going basically around the edge of the armhole. Just going to push through 2 loops on the side. Like I said, you can attach it at any point. Just insert your hook. So I'm just going to pull my slip knot through. I'm going to make chain 1. And then I'm going to go into each stitch across here. I'm going to make 4 single crochets. I'm just going to go roughly into each space that I see. And then I'm going to do a decrease stitch. I'm going to kind of pick up a loop on the next space and pick up a loop on, and again pick up a loop again on the next space that you see. You got both of those on the hook, and then just single crochet through both of those. Okay, and I'm just going to do that now all the way around, so 4 single crochets. And insert your hook into the next space, insert your hook into the next space, and yarn over and pull through those spaces, yarn over and pull through the loops, finish a single crochet. So I'm just going to continue this now all the way around. This is just going to give me a bit more shape. It's going to decrease the armhole a little bit. The more decreases you do in between the single crochets, the smaller the armhole is going to get. So I don't want it to be too much, but I do just want to shape it a bit, which is why I'm doing 4 single crochets and then a decrease and repeating that. However, if you want to make your decreases less frequent, you can do 5 single crochets and a decrease, you can do 6 single crochets and a decrease, or if you want them to be even more frequent, you can do them every other stitch or every 2 stitches. It's completely up to you. Okay, so I've just finished doing the single crochet row to just make everything give it a bit more shape. And now I'm going to show you how we do the sleeve. So what you want to do is, we are currently at the beginning where the slip stitch is, and I'm going to push my hook through that slip stitch and then just slip stitch into it to connect that row. Okay, and then after your slip stitch, you can just chain 1 and fasten off. And I'm going to be basically connecting the row back anyway. At this point, you can just try this on, and you want to basically just point out where you want your sleeve to end. And you just basically want to use this shoulder section here as like a midpoint, and then find a stitch either side of the midpoint. Make sure that they are both equal and they both fit into the multiple of 3 when you count across. So if I just fold this in half here, we're going to have basically like a semicircle kind of shape, and it's going to be kind of like a quarter of a circle, and that's going to be the sleeve. Each row is basically going to just be a row of the sedge stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch 2, turn the work, and then do the same row again and again. And doing it this way is going to give a really nice curve. Okay, so I just tried the top on, and I measured about 9 stitches away from the centre of the shoulder, and that's where I wanted my sleeve to basically start. So as you can see here, this is what it would look like folded in half. And it's basically going to start here, and it's just going to keep building this way in length, if that makes sense. I'm just going to take my working yarn, and I place my stitch marker on the left side because I'm left-handed. If you're right-handed, place it on the right side, and then you can attach your yarn and work across. But like I said, mine was about 9 stitches from the middle. So I'm going to crochet 9, and then I'm going to crochet another 9 to match it on this side. And I'm going to do my sedge stitch. So I'm going to pull my working yarn through, chain 2 to start my new row, and then I'm going to do 2 half double crochets, And then I'm going to skip 2 and make my sedge stitch into the next stitch. So single crochet, 2 half doubles, that. Okay, and then I'm going to skip 2 again, single crochet into the next stitch and 2 half doubles in that same stitch. That. Skip 2 again, and then in that last stitch, slip stitch, I'm going to single crochet, 2 half doubles, and then I'm going to match this all on the other side. So in total I've got 4 clusters, so I'm going to make sure I have 4 clusters again, and then I'm going to skip 2 on the last one and make my single crochet to end the row. And then I'm going to skip 2 and single crochet into that last one to finish the row. And now I'm going to start the next row, and instead of chaining 2, I'm going to slip stitch 2 and then turn the work. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch, slip stitch into the next stitch, then turn the work. And then I'm going to skip those 2 slip stitches, and I'm going to start my row as normal over here. I'm going to make 2 half double crochets here, skip 2 and then make my sedge stitch, then skip 2, then sedge stitch again, and I'm repeating that all the way across, just making my normal sedge stitch row. Okay, so I'm going to skip those 2 half double crochets. I'm going to single crochet into the top of the chain 2, right there, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches on the shoulder section, and that's going to act as my chain 2, and then I'm going to turn the work, and I'm going to repeat everything all over again. I'm going to skip the first 2 slip stitches, and I'm going to go into my first stitch here with 2 half double crochets. Take that stitch marker out now. And then I'm going to skip 2, edge stitch, skip 2 again, edge stitch, and then I'm just going to continue sedge stitching all the way across. And then when I get to the very last sort of 3 spaces, I'm going to skip the last 2, single crochet into the last stitch, and then to finish I'm going to slip stitch 2 and turn the work. And I'm going to repeat everything over and over again. And you want to continue this until you're happy with the sleeve length. This is really just going to give you kind of like that t-shirt kind of sleeve look. And then after your last row, you just want to do your 2 slip stitches, and then you can just chain 1 and fasten off. So complete your last 2 slip stitches to kind of neaten the row, but you won't be turning the work, you'll just be fastening off. And then you want to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. So if you are doing a shaping row, then complete that, same as on this side. So I'm going to come back when both of these sleeves are done, and then I'm going to move on to the kind of rib cage bottom section. Okay, so this is what the top should look like once you have completed that decrease row to shape the armholes and then the sleeves. They kind of come out as these little cap sleeves, and this is going to look really nice and fitted when we try this on. It's going to stretch nicely. Okay, so I've just flipped the work upside down and I'm focusing on the centre of the bra cups, and that's where I'm going to be starting. So you want to take your main colour and make a slip knot, and then take your hook that you've been using, and I'm just going to be going into the final stitch of the right side bra cup, which is the one that is roughly in the middle. This way, when I go from left to right, I can start my first stitch, skip 2, and then it aligns perfectly with the next stitch that I need to go into. So if you're right-handed, then I recommend that you start your first stitch in the left side bra cup here, attach your yarn here, and then you can skip 2 and work directly into the correct stitch on that edge. So because we worked in the back bumps, we've got quite a neat edge here to work into. So basically every stitch or every chain that I see, I'm just going to be pushing through both loops as best as I can, treating it as if it is a stitch. So here's my final stitch of the left bra cup, as you can see. And this is my final stitch of the right bra cup. So I'm just going to push my hook kind of through these two loops just to kind of get it attached, pull my slip knot through, and then to start my new row, I'm just going to chain 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop these ends in as I go. So I'm just going to kind of pull these ends over. And I'm going to start as normal with 2 half double crochets. So that's 1. That's 2. You then want to skip these 2 chains that we skipped at the bottom of that bra cup row, and then just go straight into the next stitch here with your sedge stitch. So insert your hook. I'm going to do a single crochet, half double, and half double again. Okay. I'm going to skip the next 2 again, 1, 2, then insert my hook into the next stitch at the bottom, and I'm going to repeat the sedge stitch again. So single crochet, half double crochet, and half double crochet. And I'm just continuing this all the way around the circumference of the rib cage. So I'm going all around this bra cup, round to the back, and then I'm going to end at this left bra cup. And if you're right-handed, you'll just be going the opposite direction and ending over here. And I'm just going to meet you back before that very last single crochet that we would technically make if it was on the actual bra cup at the end of the row. Okay, so once you have reached back to the beginning, you will notice that you have that chain 2 gap that you skipped on that first row of the bra cup, and then the space where you would technically make the single crochet. And then we've now reached the beginning where we've got that chain 2 and 2 half double crochets. So don't worry too much if you have thought you've counted properly and you've kind of reached a space, but it's not super exact. Don't worry too much. So the next step is to simply single crochet into the chain 2, the top of the chain 2. So we will be completely skipping the chain 2 right here on the bottom and then the stitch, and we're just going to be doing our single crochet in the top of the chain 2. However, I did find that when I did this top before and I did this first row, that there was a little bit of a gap. So I'll just show you if I just do a single crochet in the chain 2. As you can see, there is a little bit of a gap here. So I'm going to show you how you can prevent that gap. So what we'll do is we'll single crochet 2 stitches together. So I'm going to insert my hook where I technically would single crochet on the row, which is just into that stitch. And then I'm also going to insert my hook into the top of the chain 2 as well. Okay, like that. So you should have 2 kind of stitches on your hook, and you just want to single crochet through both of those stitches. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to start my next row. I'm going to chain 2 and I'm going to turn the work. So we're now working on the back of the work. And I'm going to start off as normal with 2 half double crochets in my first stitch. And then I'm going to continue with the sedge stitch as normal all the way around. And if at this point you want to try it on your work, I recommend that. And at this point you can assess if there are any areas that you feel might need changing. For example, if you're finding that your work is too tight around the rib cage, on this row you can make an increase, and I recommend maybe doing it on one of these kind of side sedge stitches when you get round to it. And to do an increase, you can simply just make 2 sedge stitches in 1. So to do an increase, single crochet, half double crochet, half double crochet, and then again same stitch, single crochet, half double, and half double. Okay, so that is your increase. So if you do feel like you might want to increase for this row just to make it a little bit more comfortable around the rib cage, then you could do an increase either side or just one increase maybe at the back. It's really up to you, and there's not really a kind of technical way of doing it. I think that it's much better when you just try it on and see. So maybe do an increase row if you need to. If you need to do a decrease row, maybe you want to cinch it in a little bit more before we work down the body, then you can also do a decrease, which I highly recommend it while we're working kind of in a round when you want to do the decrease, to basically find your next stitch that you would crochet into. And I would recommend inserting your hook, yarn over and pull through, and then insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and then treat that as your single crochet, and then just your remaining 2 half double crochets need to be worked into. So that's how you can do a decrease if you feel that you need to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue just doing my normal rows, and I'm going to try on probably every 4 rows, and at that point I'm just going to see where I feel like I might need to increase or decrease, and I'm going to let you know at what rows I'm going to do it and why. So if you're looking for more of kind of like an hourglass shape, you're typically going to cinch your work in a little bit after your bra cup row. Try it on, see if you like the shape. You might want to do another decrease row after that. Or if you want to kind of even it out a little bit, you could do the decreases every other row just to kind of make it look a little bit more naturally decreasing in that progression. I want this to be pretty much figure hugging until I kind of reach the lower waist section. Or the kind of belly button section, and that's when I want to kind of increase a little bit, I think, but it really all depends on how it's going to fit and my preference. So I'm just now going to continue working on the rib cage. I'm going to try this on after a few normal rows and then see where I'm at, and then potentially may increase or decrease, but I will let you know. Okay, so I've just finished doing all of my regular rounds before I decrease, and this is just going to give it a bit more of an hourglass figure. I'm not going to decrease too much. I'm literally just going to do 2 decreases either side. But basically I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 rows in total. So this is my 15th row, and I'm just going to chain 2 and turn the work to start my next decrease row. And I'm basically just going to use the kind of armhole gaps as the indicator of where I'm going to decrease. So I'm just going to continue doing my regular row until I get to this armhole section here, and that's where I'm going to make the decrease. So I'm just going to carry on as normal. Okay, so I'm getting kind of close to the armhole section here. So I'm just going to do 1 more sedge stitch, and then I'm going to make my decrease. And to decrease, I'm going to basically start my single crochet in this stitch, yarn over and pull through, then start my single crochet in the 3rd stitch away, so skip 2, insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on the hook, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and I'm going to count that as my single crochet that I've done. So then I'll just finish with 2 half double crochets. Okay, and now I'm just going to continue doing normal sedge stitches all the way around, and then I'm going to do the exact same at the next armhole. Okay, so I've reached my next armhole, so I'm just going to decrease again, just skipping 2 and then inserting my hook into the 3rd stitch, yarn over and pull through. Then repeat that again, skip 2, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to make that first technically single crochet, and then I'm going to finish the sedge stitch with 2 half doubles. Now I'm just going to continue doing the sedge stitch until the end of the row, and then I'm going from this point forward to just do some normal rows until I reach kind of the top of the belly button. Once I reach the top of the belly button, that's when I'm going to start increasing. So I'm just going to basically carry on until this gets all the way down to the top of the belly button, and then I'm going to show you what we do to increase. Okay, so I have reached the section now where the top reaches just above the belly button, and now I am going to be making increases to create that hourglass shape. I'm not going to do too many increases, just as a personal preference, because I just want that kind of natural curve. However, if you want to make your curve like a lot wider, or you don't want to do as many decreases as mine, or you just want to continue making it like a straight top like this, then you can do that. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to show you, so I've done in total 27 rows, and I'm just going to show you from the bra cup section right here. The kind of rib cage section here measures just roughly 7.5 inches for me. So that's from the bottom of the bra cup down. I'm now going to show you how I'm going to increase for the wider sections. So it's going to be similar to the decrease section. I'm going to do my increases at either side. I'm not going to really count it because it doesn't really need it. And I'm going to be increasing every other row. So this row I'm going to increase, the next row I'm just going to do a normal row, and then the next row I'll increase again. And then at that point I'm going to kind of assess how long the top is getting, if I want to do any more increases, etc. So I'm going to do 2 increase rows for now and then kind of assess it. So just going to chain 2 and turn the work to start my next row. And I'm going to sedge stitch as normal all the way to the armhole section here. So just whatever stitch kind of lines up pretty much with the armhole, so probably around here. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to make 2 sedge stitches in one. So I'm going to crochet all the way to here, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to increase. So I've just sedge stitched from the center of the bra cup all the way across to the first armhole. And the next stitch here that I'm going to crochet into is in line with the armhole. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to make 2 sedge stitches in one. And then I'm just going to continue going into the next stitch and doing a regular sedge stitch, single crochet, half double and half double. And I'm going to continue that all the way around to the other side where the armhole is. And just whatever stitch lines up with the in line with the armhole, I'll do another increase, so 2 sedge stitches in one. And then I'm just going to crochet all the way back to the beginning again, on the center. And when I get to the end, I'm just going to single crochet into the top of the chain 2 to finish the row. Then my following row is just going to simply be a normal row, so no increases. And then I'm going to increase again on the next row, and then after that do another normal row. So yeah, I will come back when those 4 rows are done. Okay, so I've just finished my 4 rows, ended on a normal row, and as you can see, you can kind of see the work starting to widen out a little bit. The top is not really near to the length that I want it though. And I tried it on, and I do think that I am going to continue doing another increase row. I think I'll do another block of 4, so increase, normal row, and then try it on again. And I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on how it looks until I'm happy with the length. So I'm going to try it on again after another 4 rows. If I'm happy then with the width at that point, then I'll probably just do normal rows until the work reaches the length that I want. So yeah, basically I'm just carrying on until basically the end of the row. I'm going to come back once I have reached my final row, and then I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, so I've just finished doing all of my rows from the rib cage down. If you were curious, I ended up doing literally from the very first row underneath the bra cup all the way down, 39 rows in total, which measured roughly about 10 inches. And if you're also curious as to how long the top is fully now, so from the top of the shoulder all the way down, it's about 21 inches. So I'm now just going to fasten off. So I ended on a single crochet in the top of the chain 2, just as normal. And I'm now just going to chain 1 and fasten off. We've finished now, like that. I'm going to weave that in later on. And I'm now going to be doing a shaping row around the kind of inside of the chest area. So I'm going to start all the way from the top of the shoulder, go down the first bra cup, up the second, across the other shoulder, down, and then across the back to the original part that we started at. this is purely just because when I tried this on, it was still quite open. It was a little bit too revealing. So I just want to cinch this in a little bit. And I'm personally just going to do the exact same decrease sequence I did for the armholes. So I'm going to do 4 single crochets and then a decrease and repeat that around. So I'm just going to make my slip knot, and I'm going to just start at the top of the shoulder, is just where I'm choosing to do it. So any ends that I see poking through as well, I'm going to weave them in as I go. I'm just going to start at the top of the shoulder. I'm going to go right in the middle and pull my slip knot through there. And I'm going to work as best as I can through like 2 loops. So just chain 1 to attach it. And then in sort of next space that I can find, I'm just going to do a single crochet. Insert my hook, I'm going to weave all these ends in. Single crochet. 1. Then kind of find the next space that corresponds. That's 2. The next sort of space corresponds. That's 3. And the next space, that's 4. So that's going to be my sequence. So now I'm going to just do the decrease. I'm just going to insert my hook into sort of the next loop and then insert my hook into the next loop. And then loop these tails over. Then complete my single crochet as normal through all of these loops to make the decrease. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat this sequence all the way around. I'm going to try it on afterwards once I reach the end. You don't need to fasten off and try it on. You can just kind of pull the loop pretty long so that when you try it on, it doesn't come undone. Okay, so I've just reached the end of the round. I ended up doing 3 single crochets and a decrease and then repeating that. So I found that this cinched it in at the perfect amount that I wanted. And then I just worked all the way around back up to the top shoulder, and I've just slip stitched back into that first chain 1 that we made to attach it. So now I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off. And I can weave that end in later. Okay, so while off camera, I weaved in all of the other ends just to make it a little bit easier. And now I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the frill detail. So I placed a stitch marker in the area where I want the first row to start. And I'm basically going to flip the top upside down. We're going to be working on the outside-most loops here. So this side, they are technically the front loop. Well, when I flip it around, they are going to become the back loop because the front loop becomes kind of like the one closest to you right here. So these ones on the outside are going to become the back loops when we flip it over. I'm starting where the stitch marker is, and I'm just going to insert my hook in the back loop on this side, front loop on the other side. And I'm going to pull my main colour slip knot through that, and then I'm going to chain 2 to start my first stitch. So this is going to count as a double crochet, and I'm going to do 3 double crochets into each stitch. So I'm going to do 2 more double crochets in this same loop. Remember, I'm only going through back loop. And then into the next back loop right here, just this one here, I'm going to do another 3 double crochets. And same in the next back loop, 3 double crochets, and I'm weaving in this tail as I go. I'm going all the way across to the other side of the shoulder here, just doing 3 double crochets in the back loop. And we do this in the back loop because it basically creates like a little flap edge so that it automatically just folds down when you crochet in this back loop here, which is going to give it that kind of frill edge layer on top of the work. If you're finding that the frill edge is kind of pushing upwards, Then at either side of the shoulder and then also in the middle, you can kind of just sew down a small section so that it just holds itself down. So yeah, I'm going to continue this all the way across, making 3 double crochets in each back loop all the way to the corresponding stitch on the other side of the shoulder. And then after that, I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off. I'll weave in any ends that I need to, and that is basically the top all finished. So I'm going to come back and show you the final result. And this is the final result of the tops. I absolutely loved making both of these tops, and I absolutely love using different yarn textures to really get that full effect. I just love the stretchy stitch. I love how satisfying it is to work all of these tops up. I actually think I could make 100 of these. They are just so gorgeous and flattering. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. If you have any ideas of what you'd like me to make next, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.